Glorious Model D Wireless Opinion. The Glorious Model D Wireless is available for $79.99. Pro. Great wireless performance. Excellent sensor performance. Very low click latency. Very high button quality. Very good scroll wheel. Good choice of components. Lightweight. Excellent mouse feet. Flexible charging cable. Grippy coating. Full software customizability. Rich RGB lighting. Wireless extender included. Contra. Resource heavy software. Even though no doubt an excellent mouse, the Glorious Model O Wireless wasn't without flaws. Most prominent was what I like to call onset motion delay. When moving the mouse from a standstill, the sensor required some time to switch gears, so to speak, during which transitory period motion delay was increased. Essentially, motion delay started at 5 ms and gradually got lower until it reached its minimum. While many other mice featuring the 3335 or 3370 have shown similar behavior since, it still is something I consider worth getting rid of, more so for the inconsistency it introduces than the delay itself. The good news is that Glorious indeed has addressed this behavior on the Model D Wireless and, by extension, the Model O Wireless. In wired mode, said onset delay is now entirely absent, while in wireless mode, a small remnant of it can still be measured, but it is so minuscule, ~1 ms, it may as well not exist. The lack of onset delay also enables me to properly measure the wireless delay, which sits at around 1.5 ms, which is virtually on par with the likes of Logitech and Razer. This is no doubt at least partially due to the included wireless extender, which is a most welcome yet rarely encountered addition at this price point. Aside from the onset delay, not much needed fixing on the Model D Wireless anyway. Sensor performance is excellent, with appreciably low CPI deviation, essentially flawless polling stability across all settings, and great tracking in general. In the software, click latency can be lowered even further now, down to an outstandingly low +0.8 ms, Ikari scaling, though this setting will result in accidental clicks when slamming down the mouse. As a side note, default click latency is still 10 ms, which is not an issue since it can be lowered in the software, but I wouldn't mind a lower default for those not fond of Glorious Core. Speaking of which, in the past year, Glorious has ironed out all the bugs I originally experienced with Glorious Core, so as far as I'm concerned, using Core has been smooth sailing. All the important options are there and work fine, though I wouldn't mind a lower RAM footprint. Furthermore, even though Core does include a percentage-based battery life indicator, it is far from accurate and thus of limited usefulness. Around 70 hours of battery life can be expected, but only without RGB lighting. With illumination, and especially at full brightness, battery life will be less than 20 hours. Instead of the trusty old Omron 20M switches used for previous Glorious releases, the Model D Wireless comes with a set of Kailh GM 8.0 80M switches for the main buttons. Becoming ever more popular lately, the GM 8.0 switches provide a much firmer and more tactile, but also stiffer button response than the Omrons. If looking past the rated lifetime, I wouldn't say they're necessarily better or worse than the old ones, just different, even though I personally do prefer the good old Omrons and their lighter actuation. Side buttons are unchanged and just as good, and the same goes for the scroll wheel, which still is low on noise and provides well-defined steps. No changes have been made to the charging cable, either, which is still among the most flexible charging cables, allowing one to conveniently charge the Model D Wireless without feeling too restricted by the cable. The same goes for the feet, which are of the same quality as those on the Model O Wireless. That said, I did experience some scratchiness on my sample, which is strange as I can't spot anything that could be deemed responsible for the mild scraping on the bottom. Since this is the first time I've experienced something like that on a Glorious mouse, I'm inclined to write it off as a one-off occurrence. Lastly, at 69 grams, the Model D Wireless essentially weighs the same as the Model O Wireless, or, even more impressively, The wired Model D, the 450 mAh battery alone accounts for around 10 grams, so getting the weight this low without compromising on build quality is quite the achievement. As for the quality control improvements promised by Glorious, I'm afraid I can't say much about that. My samples have always been pristine in this regard, and the Glorious Model D wireless is no exception to this aside from the aforementioned scratching. At the same time, I'm well aware my experience isn't shared by everyone, which is why I can only recommend keeping an eye on user reports, as a review based on a single sample never will be reflective of the state of QC on average. Overall, Glorious has another winner with the Model D wireless. For $79.99, value for money is great, and performance easily comparable with many competitors found in the $120 plus price bracket. If Glorious finds a way to trim down the RAM footprint of Glorious Core, I'll soon run out of things to criticize altogether. The biggest contender for the Model D wireless is most likely the Pulsar's Lite wireless, which costs $5 less and performs ever so slightly better. We're talking margins here, however, and the lack of a dedicated CPI button and a traditional bottom plate on this Lite wireless isn't necessarily everyone's cup of tea. Either way, getting either of these mice is no mistake, and the Model D wireless yet again earns our Editor's Choice and Budget awards. When looking at the rest of the right-handed ergonomic wireless competition, there is absolutely no shortage. Priced at $129.99, the Roccat Pro Air has no holes, yet only weighs 73 grams, has similarly great build quality and performance, but lacks a wireless extender and suffers from botched polling with RGB turned on. The Razer DeathAdder V2 Pro is also priced at $129.99, weighs a bit more at 87 grams, and its main buttons can be hit or miss, but the optical switches afford outstandingly low latency, sensor performance is stellar, polling stable, wireless delay just a tad worse, and a wireless extender is included. The Asus ROG Gladius 3 wireless weighs 89 grams, allows for using either mechanical or optical main button switches, both of which shine with incredibly low latency, has excellent sensor and wireless performance provided the latest firmware is applied, and a wireless extender can be found in the box, but it is brought down by Armoury Crate, which may only please masochists. The much smaller Asus ROG Keras wireless lacks a wireless extender, but too has hot swappable main button switches, great performance, and appreciably low weight at 79 grams, very low click latency, and very nice buttons and feet, but again comes with a non-negotiable Armoury Crate burden, for $99.99. Lastly, the Dream Machines DM6 Holy Duo is the budget option, even featuring a wireless extender at a price point of $49.99, weighs 79 grams, but suffers from very high click latency, some motion delay, massive CPI deviation, and a coating that attracts finger marks almost magnetically.